Silence is usually misunderstood. People think it means weakness, avoidance, or fear. But in reality, silence can be one of the most powerful psychological positions you can take, especially when you're dealing with someone driven by ego. An ego survives on reaction. It needs attention, resistance, and emotional engagement. Take that away, and something strange happens. The dynamic shifts, the control slips, the noise gets louder on their side. Stoic philosophy understood this long before modern psychology gave it names. Marcus Aurelius wrote about withdrawing your judgment, not your dignity. Epictetus warned that the moment you react, you surrender authority over yourself. This video isn't about manipulating people, it's about self-mastery, about what happens when you stop feeding fragile egos and start standing still in your own center. Today, you'll learn 7 clear signs that your silence is doing more than you realize. They feel it, they resist it, and in that resistance, their ego begins to crack, quietly, inevitably, over time, slowly. Sign 1. They try to provoke you, but you don't bite. When silence begins to work, the ego's first instinct is not reflection, it is a provocation. This is the earliest, loudest signal that your quiet has disrupted someone's internal balance. Ego cannot survive without reaction, and when you stop reacting, it reaches for you in subtle ways. The provocation is rarely obvious. It hides behind sarcasm, teasing, passive jokes, or comments framed as just being honest. It may look playful, harmless, even friendly. But beneath it sits a test. Are you still emotionally reachable? Can they still move you? In work environments, this shows up as side remarks in meetings, unnecessary corrections, or emails designed to trigger defensiveness. In families, it appears as guilt wrapped in humor, or criticism disguised as concern. In social circles, it's the backhanded compliment or sudden shift in tone. Different settings, same mechanism. Ego provokes because it is hungry. It needs resistance to feel alive. It needs friction to confirm its importance. When you remove reaction, you remove oxygen. And without oxygen, the ego panics. Most people misunderstand this moment. They believe responding calmly proves maturity. They think explaining themselves restores balance. In reality, any reaction feeds the very thing disturbing the peace. Silence, when intentional, does the opposite. It refuses participation. Stoic philosophy is clear on this point. You do not need to attend every invitation to conflict. Marcus Aurelius warned against giving others the power to disturb your inner state. Epictetus taught that control begins the moment you stop reacting automatically. When you don't bite, something unsettling happens. The provocation lands and finds nothing to attach to. The joke falls flat. The comment echoes back to the speaker, and in that pause, discomfort arises. Not in you, but in them. This discomfort is the crack. Ego expects pushback, it expects engagement. Silence denies both. It does not argue, it does not explain, it simply stands still. And stillness is unbearable to an ego that relies on control. Understand this clearly. You are not being passive, you are exercising discipline. Silence here is a boundary without announcement, a withdrawal of access, a signal that your emotional energy is no longer available on demand. This is why provocation often escalates after silence. The ego tries harder, louder jokes, sharper remarks, stronger attempts. This is not confidence, it is desperation. If you hold your silence through this phase, the power dynamic shifts permanently. You step out of their frame, you stop playing by their rules, and the ego feels the loss immediately. This sign matters most because it appears early. It tells you your silence is working, it tells you control has slipped, and it reminds you that strength is not proven through response, but through restraint. Silence here is not absence, it is presence without permission. and that is exactly why it unsettles them. At this stage, the discipline required is internal. You must resist the urge to clarify, correct, or defend. Not because you are wrong, but because you are no longer interested in winning fragile games. Each unreturned provocation strengthens your position. Each calm pause reinforces your autonomy. Over time, the ego learns a hard lesson. Access to you is no longer guaranteed. And once that realization settles in, the balance of power has already changed, quietly, irreversibly, without confrontation or noise. This is where true self-mastery begins, not in domination, but in selective engagement, choosing silence over stimulation, dignity over reaction, and inner authority over the exhausting need to be seen, heard, validated, or emotionally victorious in moments that truly matter. Sign 2. They start talking. More than usual, when silence truly unsettles an ego, the next thing you'll notice is noise. Not your noise, theirs. This is one of the clearest, most recognizable signs that your silence is working, and it often creates an immediate aha moment for those paying attention. The dynamic is simple, but powerful. When you stop filling the space, they rush to fill it for you. Words begin to spill out. Explanations appear unprompted. Stories get longer. Messages arrive more frequently. What once required effort from you now seems to flow endlessly from them. This happens because silence creates a vacuum, and ego cannot tolerate emptiness. Ego needs presence. It needs acknowledgement. It needs confirmation that it still exists in your mental world. When that confirmation disappears, the fear that follows is not rejection. It is erased. To the ego, being ignored feels worse than being challenged. Conflict still means relevance. Silence threatens invisibility, and invisibility is the ego's deepest fear. You see this clearly in conversations. Where there was once balance, there is now imbalance. They interrupt themselves. They over-explain. They answer questions you never asked. They circle back to topics you've already moved past. Not because the subject matters, but because your attention does. In professional settings, this shows up as excessive justification. Colleagues explain decisions in detail you never requested. They narrate their thoughts aloud. They talk through silence as if it were a problem to be solved. The unspoken message is simple. Please notice me. Please confirm I still matter. In personal relationships, it appears as long messages, repeated check-ins, or sudden openness. They share more than before, often too much. Silence from you feels like a withdrawal of validation, and the ego scrambles to restore it. This is not confidence. Confidence does not rush to fill silence. Confidence is comfortable with pauses. What you are witnessing is insecurity surfacing when control fades. Stoic philosophy understood this dynamic deeply. Power is not found in dominating conversation. It is found in not needing to dominate it. When you are comfortable with silence, you demonstrate self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency quietly destabilizes those who rely on external validation. Most people misinterpret this sign. They assume increased talking means interest, friendliness, or openness. In some cases, it can. But when it follows sustained silence, it often signals discomfort. The ego is speaking not to communicate, but to anchor itself. Your role here is critical. If you rush to respond, reassure, or match their energy, you restore equilibrium in their favor. You confirm that their words still pull you back into the dynamic. Silence, maintained calmly, does something else entirely. It allows the imbalance to reveal itself. As they speak more, they reveal more. Their priorities, their anxieties, their need for recognition. Silence becomes a mirror, and the longer you hold it, the clearer the reflection becomes. This is where psychological power quietly shifts. You are no longer chasing clarity. You are receiving information without effort. The ego, in its attempt to reassert presence, exposes itself. Importantly, this is not about manipulation. It is about awareness. You are not engineering their behavior. You are simply not interfering with it, and in that non-interference, truth surfaces. Ego talks because it is afraid of disappearing. Silence reminds it that relevance is not guaranteed, that attention is not automatic, that control cannot be demanded. If you remain grounded here, something subtle happens. Their words lose urgency. Their explanations lose force. You begin to hear not what they want you to hear, but what they are afraid of losing. That is the quiet power of silence. It does not shout authority. It reveals it. This sign is unmistakable once you see it. When you stop filling space and they cannot stop talking, understand what is happening beneath the surface. Your silence has removed the spotlight, and the ego, desperate not to fade into the background, steps into it on its own. Do not interrupt this process. Observe it. Let the words flow past you without attachment. The more space you allow, the more clearly the power dynamic rearranges itself. Not through force, not through argument, but through absence. And in that absence, you remain steady, composed, and increasingly untouchable. Sign 3. They reframe the story to save face. When silence continues and provocation no longer works, the ego changes strategy. It stops poking, it stops filling space. Instead, it rewrites history. This is where narrative control replaces direct engagement, and it reveals a deeper level of discomfort. Reframing the story is the ego's attempt to avoid losing without admitting defeat. Rather than facing what happened, it changes how what happened is remembered. The facts remain the same, but the meaning is altered. Context shifts. Responsibility moves. Details blur conveniently. You'll notice this when past interactions are suddenly described differently. What was once their decision becomes a misunderstanding. What was once clear behavior becomes out of context. What was once an obvious impact becomes not what I meant. The ego is not searching for truth, it is searching for relief. This behavior often appears quietly. They speak to others, not to you. They tell a version where they remain reasonable, justified, even generous. You are not attacked directly. You are edited out, minimized, or subtly reframed as the problem. This is not confidence, it is image preservation. From a Stoic perspective, this moment is critical. Explanations feel persuasive because they sound logical, but Stoicism teaches restraint here. Do not chase narratives, do not correct stories you were never meant to hear. Words can lie, patterns cannot. When someone consistently reframes events only after losing control, that pattern matters more than any single explanation. Observe timing, observe repetition, observe who benefits from the revised version. Ego reframes not to clarify reality, but to protect identity. In professional environments, this looks like retroactive justification. Decisions are explained after outcomes are known. Accountability dissolves into collective language. Mistakes become learning moments without ownership. The story shifts just enough to protect status. In personal relationships, reframing becomes emotional revisionism. Promises are reinterpreted. Boundaries are described as overreactions. Harm is reframed as intention. The ego cannot tolerate being seen as wrong, so it changes what wrong means. This is where many people get trapped. They argue the facts. They present evidence. They demand acknowledgement. And in doing so, they re-enter the ego's frame. The discussion becomes about whose story wins, not what is true. Stoic insight cuts through this trap. You do not need agreement to remain grounded. You do not need validation to remain whole. Silence here is not ignorance, it is discernment. By not engaging with a revised narrative, you deny it power. You refuse to debate fiction. You allow inconsistencies to stand unchallenged, knowing they reveal more than any correction ever could. Over time, this creates pressure. The ego must work harder to maintain the new story. I must repeat it, defend it, adjust it again. And each adjustment exposes instability. Consistency is hard to fake when silence removes opposition. The key discipline here is patience. Observe behavior across time, not isolated statements. Patterns tell you what explanations are designed to hide. Stoicism is not about judging others harshly. It is about seeing clearly without attachment. When you stop trusting explanations and start watching patterns, the emotional fog lifts. You no longer feel compelled to defend your reality. You recognize that truth does not need advocacy when time reveals it naturally. This sign confirms progress. When someone rewrites the past to survive the present, your silence has already done its work. The ego is no longer trying to control you. It is trying to rescue itself. Remain still. Remain observant. Let the stories shift without following them. The more quietly you stand outside the narrative, the more obvious its fractures become. This is how Stoic strength operates. Not by winning arguments, but by refusing to argue with distortion. Not by correcting perception, but by trusting consistency. When you watch patterns instead of chasing explanations, clarity replaces confusion, and the ego quietly exhausts itself trying to stay intact. Sign 4. They seek validation from others. Once silence removes them from the center, the ego looks for a new audience. When it can no longer extract validation directly from you, it seeks witnesses elsewhere. This is sign 4, and it reveals desperation more than strength. The story is no longer told to resolve anything, but to be seen, heard, and confirmed. They begin sharing selective versions of events with co-workers, friends, or family members. Details are curated. The tone is adjusted. You become a character rather than a participant. The goal is simple. Replace your silence with applause from someone else. This shift exposes ego dependency clearly. In practical terms, this behavior appears quietly but consistently. Conversations happen without you present. Your name surfaces in rooms you never entered. They seek sympathy, agreement, or moral cover. Sometimes it is a subtle concern. Sometimes it is outright criticism disguised as explanation. What matters is not the content, but the direction. Attention is being rerouted. Ego cannot tolerate existing without a witness. It needs eyes to confirm its version of reality. When your silence denies that function, it recruits replacements to stabilize its self-image. Without witnesses, ego dissolves, so it panics and multiplies observers rapidly to protect its identity. Stoicism offers a clear lens here. Do not follow the story. Do not defend your name in every room. Reputation is not built through correction, but through consistency over time. Marcus Aurelius warned that the opinions of others are beyond your control. Chasing validation traps you inside the ego's theater. Silence removes you from the stage. When you stop performing, the audience becomes irrelevant. The one speaking the loudest reveals need, not authority. True power requires no spectators. It stands independently, rooted in character, discipline, and internal alignment alone, not borrowed from external approval or fleeting attention cycles ever again. This stage tempts many to intervene. They want to correct lies, clarify motives, or reclaim the narrative. That impulse is understandable, but costly. Every explanation grants legitimacy to the performance. Every defense confirms the audience matters. Stoic restraint asks for something harder. Let the story travel without you. Truth does not need escort. Patterns outlive rumors. Over time, behavior contradicts fiction. Silence allows inconsistency to surface naturally. The ego grows louder, then thinner. You remain intact, unexhausted, and observant. Distance reveals reality faster than confrontation ever could in complex dynamics, where emotions distort perception and narratives collapse under pressure eventually. Seeking validation elsewhere is not victory. It is compensation. The ego borrows strength when it cannot generate it internally. Allies are recruited not for truth, but for reassurance. This is why the tone often feels exaggerated or moralized. It must persuade quickly. Silence frustrates this strategy because it offers nothing to oppose. No counter-story, no visible defense, only absence. And absence forces the ego to perform continuously, exhausting itself while you conserve energy and clarity. Eventually, observers notice imbalance, repetition, and emotional urgency behind the polished facade, as cracks quietly widen and credibility erodes without resistance from you present. Remember the Stoic principle here. If someone needs witnesses, they lack inner stability. You do not need to follow them into the crowd. Stay where you are. Silence denies spectacle. It denies theater. It denies the ego of its audience. Over time, the performance loses momentum. Applause fades. The story collapses under its own weight. You are not erased. You are simply no longer participating. And that quiet refusal preserves your dignity, your clarity, and your power. Without witnesses, ego dissolves while self-mastery strengthens through disciplined detachment over time, reaffirming sovereignty, emotional control, and unshakable inner authority, always intact within you. Sign 5. They oscillate between cold and friendly. When silence continues and the ego fails to regain control through provocation, storytelling, or outside validation, it enters a more unstable phase. This is where behavior becomes inconsistent. One moment they are distant, cold, or withdrawn. The next, unexpectedly warm, polite, even generous. This oscillation is not emotional maturity. It is a signal that control is slipping. At first glance, this behavior can be confusing. You may wonder if things are improving, if the tension is dissolving, if silence has softened them. But look closer. The shifts are not rooted in clarity or growth. They are reactive. They appear suddenly and disappear just as quickly. Coldness is used as punishment. Friendliness is used as bait. Both serve the same purpose, pulling you back into engagement. Psychologically, this pattern reveals instability. The ego is experimenting. It has lost its usual leverage, so it cycles through different strategies to see what still works. Distance is meant to create discomfort in you. Warmth is meant to invite reassurance. Neither is authentic. Both are tests. This pattern often shows up after previous tactics fail. Provocation no longer triggers reaction. Talking more no longer fills the gap. Validation from others no longer restores balance. So the ego alternates signals, hoping one of them will re-establish connection. In relationships, this looks like sudden kindness after detachment, a friendly message after days of silence, a compliment after tension. The friendliness feels unearned, disconnected from accountability. It is not repaired. It is rich. In professional environments, it appears as mixed signals. A cold meeting followed by casual friendliness in the hallway. A dismissive tone followed by collaboration offers. These swings are not strategic brilliance. They are confused. Stoically, this is an important moment. The temptation is to interpret friendliness as progress, to believe the dynamic is normalizing. But Stoicism teaches observation over interpretation. Watch consistency, not moments. Control expresses itself through stability. Loss of control expresses itself through fluctuation. When someone no longer knows which approach will affect you, they try all of them. Cold to provoke anxiety, friendly to invite openness, detached to signal withdrawal, engaging to test access. The ego is searching for traction. Silence accelerates this exposure. Because you do not react, the shifts become more visible. You stop adjusting yourself to match their mood. You remain steady. And against steadiness, inconsistency stands out sharply. This is where many people get pulled back in. They respond to friendliness to keep things smooth. They react to coldness to restore balance. In doing so, they reward the oscillation. They teach the ego that switching tactics works. Stoic discipline requires something harder. Do not chase warmth. Do not correct coldness. Treat both the same. Calm, neutral, unavailable to manipulation. When friendliness appears, receive it without leaning into it. When coldness appears, accept it without chasing resolution. This neutral stance removes incentive. Without reaction, oscillation loses purpose. Over time, the ego becomes fatigued. Switching masks constantly is exhausting. Each failed attempt reinforces the same realization. You are no longer governed by their emotional signals. This is not cruelty. It is clear. You are not rejecting the person. You are rejecting the pattern. Notice how this stage feels less aggressive and more uncertain. That uncertainty is the signal. The ego no longer knows where it stands. Silence has dissolved predictability, and without predictability, control collapses. This sign often precedes withdrawal or deeper self-questioning, but only if you remain consistent. If you break silence here, the cycle resets. If you hold it, the dynamic transforms. Stoicism does not ask you to harden yourself. It asks you to remain grounded. Stability is the quiet authority that exposes instability without confrontation. When someone alternates between cold and friendly, understand what you are witnessing. Not complexity, not depth, but a system is losing command. Your steadiness becomes the contrast. Your silence becomes the boundary, and in that contrast, the ego realizes it can no longer pull you back through emotional fluctuation. That realization is unsettling, because control once felt automatic. Now it requires effort, and effort signals weakness. By staying composed through these shifts, you do not dominate, you disengage. And disengagement is where the ego finally begins to falter. Not loudly, but unmistakably, as its tactics lose effectiveness and its authority quietly dissolves in the presence of calm, unmovable self-mastery. Sign 6. They can't look at you the same way. When silence has done its work and the ego has exhausted its strategies, something subtle but unmistakable changes. The way they look at you is no longer the same. Eye contact becomes brief, awkward, or avoided altogether. Their posture shifts. Their presence tightens. This is not a coincidence. It is recognition. This sign is quiet, but it is powerful. It appears not in words, but in micro-moments. A glance that breaks too quickly. A forced smile. A stiffness that was never there before. These are not reactions to something you said or did. They are responses to something you stopped doing. You stopped needing them. Ego thrives on relevance. It wants to feel necessary, influential, impactful. When you no longer seek approval, reassurance, or emotional confirmation, that relevance disappears. And once relevance is gone, the ego feels exposed. The eyes reveal this first. When someone feels secure in their position, eye contact is natural. When that position is threatened, the gaze falters. Avoidance becomes a defense. Looking at you directly would require acknowledging a shift in power they cannot explain away. This often confuses people. They wonder if tension exists, if something is wrong, if they are offended without realizing it. The truth is simpler and more unsettling. Your silence has altered the hierarchy. You're no longer oriented toward them, and they feel it. In social settings, this appears as awkward pauses or sudden disengagement. Conversations shorten. Familiar ease vanishes. The person may act polite but distant, present but guarded. The comfort they once had around you is gone. In professional environments, this shows up as formality replacing familiarity. Meetings become stiff. Interaction becomes procedural. The unspoken acknowledgement is this: you are no longer predictable. Stoically, this moment is revealing. It shows that influence was never about dominance, but dependency. When dependency dissolves, the ego loses its anchor. This is not hostility. It is recalibration. They are adjusting to a version of you that no longer orbits their emotional gravity. Many people respond to this by trying to soften it. They re-engage, joke, reassure, or restore familiarity. They fear discomfort. But Stoicism teaches composure here. Do not rush to restore what was built on imbalance. The awkwardness is not a problem to solve. It is a signal to respect. When you no longer need someone's validation, you no longer offer them emotional leverage. That leverage once made eye contact easy. Now it creates friction. Notice how this sign carries no aggression. There are no attacks, no stories, no provocation, just distance. That distance speaks clearly. It says the ego recognizes a loss. It cannot reverse through effort alone. This is where self-mastery becomes visible. You are no longer reacting. You are no longer adjusting yourself to maintain comfort. You stand as you are, without demand. The ego senses this and withdraws slightly, not because you threatened it, but because you no longer support it. This change often triggers internal conflict for them. They feel smaller without knowing why. Their confidence dims in your presence, not because you took something, but because they lost something they once relied on. From a Stoic view, this is confirmation, not victory. It confirms that your silence has restored internal sovereignty. You are acting from self-sufficiency rather than need. Let this sign pass without interpretation. Do not assign meaning. Do not seek resolution. Maintain dignity through consistency. The way they look at you has changed because the way you stand within yourself has changed. That shift cannot be unseen. When the ego can no longer locate itself in your attention, it hesitates, and in that hesitation, the balance is revealed. You did not dominate, you detached. And detachment, once embodied, permanently alters how others perceive you, not through fear, but through the quiet recognition that you are no longer available to be controlled, influenced, or emotionally positioned in ways that once felt effortless. Sign 7, they start questioning themselves, the final crack. When silence has stripped away provocation, noise, stories, and shifting masks, something rare begins to happen. The ego no longer looks outward for leverage. It turns inward. This is the final crack, and few people ever reach it. At this stage, silence stops being a boundary and becomes a mirror. Without reaction, explanation, or resistance, the ego is forced to sit with itself. There's nothing left to blame, no audience to persuade, no opponent to provoke. Questions begin quietly. They are not spoken aloud, but they surface internally. Why doesn't this affect them? Why am I unsettled? Why did I need their response? This is uncomfortable territory. Ego avoids self-examination because it threatens identity, but silence leaves no escape. With nothing to push against, the ego collapses inward. Stoicism recognizes this moment as rare and decisive. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind becomes disturbed not by events, but by its judgments. When silence removes the external, only judgment remains. You may notice subtle shifts. They hesitate. They speak less confidently. They pause before reacting. These are not signs of defeat, but of awareness. Most people never reach this phase. They provoke, perform, and distract endlessly. But when silence remains, ego eventually runs out of moves. This is why this sign comes last. It cannot be forced. It cannot be rushed. It arrives only when you have fully detached. At this point, your role is simple. Do nothing. Say nothing. Remain steady. Let the mirror do its work. Silence is no longer a tactic. It is your natural state. And in that stillness, you are no longer reacting to ego, yours or theirs. This is Stoic freedom. Not control over others, but command over yourself. When someone begins questioning themselves, your silence has already succeeded. You didn't break them. You stepped aside. And in that space, they finally met themselves, without distraction, without performance, without you. That is the final crack, and the quietest one. It leaves no scars, no arguments, no winners. Only awareness, which either leads to growth or collapse. Your task is finished. Remain disciplined. Remain detached. Remain sovereign. That is the Stoic way forward. And the moment silence transforms from resistance into wisdom, leaving you untouched, grounded, and free. It does not require applause, recognition, or revenge. It asks only that you trust time, observe carefully, and resist the urge to interfere. Silence completes what effort never could, because it aligns you with reality rather than illusion. When the ego finally faces itself, you are no longer involved. That distance is not cold, it is clear. And clarity, once earned, cannot be taken away. You walk forward lighter, no longer carrying reactions, expectations, or borrowed identities. The silence remains, not as armor, but as understanding, shaping every interaction that follows with restraint, precision, and inner calm. This is how Stoicism ends conflict, restores balance, and anchors power within the self, permanently, quietly, and without force. Or noise. Silence, when practiced with discipline, reveals more than any confrontation ever could. In this video, you've seen how ego reacts when it loses access to your attention through provocation, noise, rewritten stories, borrowed validation, emotional swings, avoidance, and finally, self-questioning. Each sign points to the same truth. Power shifts the moment you stop feeding what depends on reaction. This is not about winning or breaking anyone. It's about reclaiming sovereignty over your emotions, your energy, and your inner state. Stoicism teaches that mastery begins where reactivity ends. Silence is not withdrawal from life. It is conscious engagement on your own terms. The practice now is simple, but not easy. Observe more. React less. Let patterns speak louder than words. Choose stillness when ego demands noise. Thank you for spending this time reflecting deeply with me. If this perspective resonated, carry it into your daily interactions and test it through experience. Stay grounded, stay disciplined, and I'll see you in the next video, where we continue exploring the quiet strength of Stoic philosophy.